This is Business Incorporated, live here on Channels Television. I am Bosin Amafaye. Welcome to the program. Coming up today on the show, the Egyptian stock market loses 66 billion Egyptian pounds on the back of anti-government protests. The International Monetary Fund is set to confirm Bulgarian economist Georgieva as the new managing director. And the Africa Risk-Reward Index 2019 reveals key trends shaping investment landscape in major African markets. Let's get the show started. Welcome our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. The Egyptian stock market finally took a breather today after most stocks reached support levels that became attractive in the absence of negative news. Stocks climbed nearly 2.5% on the back of purchases from Arab and foreign buyers. It's been on 8 consecutive days of losses at the Egyptian bourse, which has lost a total of 66.02 billion Egyptian pounds since anti-government protests began over the weekend. The EGX 30 index shed 4.2% at the end of Tuesday's session amid significant sell-offs from foreign investors. But first, let's see the numbers coming out of the African markets. And I just mentioned earlier, the EGX 30, that's the Egyptian main index, gained a whopping 2.48% intraday this Wednesday. That's not the case here in Nigeria, where the main index, the NSE All-Share Index, was pointing south intraday. The same story in South Africa with the GSE All-Share Index down 1.64%, also about midday Nigerian time. Cross over to the Middle East proper and see a mixed bag of numbers with the Abu Dhabi index up some 0.24% intraday Wednesday. The Dubai financial market was largely flat, 0.04%, also intraday. And in Qatar, you find the index up over 1%, while the Saudi Tadawul index was down 0.64% intraday. The Saudi stock market has since lost its 9,000 index reading. So we're crossing to Europe, where stocks are trading sharply lower Wednesday as political events on both sides of the Atlantic, London and Washington, weighing on investors' sentiment. Ulrich Bartz is my colleague at DWTV, is joining us via the Frankfurt Stock Exchange to share some thoughts and insight in today's trading day from the main European market in Germany. Good afternoon, Ulrich. It's good to see you on the show. Let's hit the ground running, as it were. Shares in Asia and Europe were heading down today, and I can see the index around the flat line there over your shoulder. So who's the market blaming for the uneasiness that we have, or the unnerving of the investors that we've seen today?
Yeah, it's just the issues don't seem to be going away. Days and months have gone by, and none of the issues that are worrying the financial markets have been resolved. Instead, there are undulations without end, and there are no solutions in sight. Brexit could be coming to an end in October. At least might be knowing the direction, or maybe even sooner. But the thing is, as of today, one doesn't know. Same thing with the trade issue with the United States, and now piled on top of that is talk of an impeachment of the U.S. president in connection with the remarks he made about what he would like to know from Ukrainian officials on his political opponents. And that, of course, could paralyze decision-making in the United States if that goes forth in any way, and paralyze decision-making not only on the economic front in terms of budgets, but also in political sense and possibly in a military sense. So people are busy digesting that, mulling that, how it's going to affect them. And it's further offering the opportunity to find an excuse not to invest now, to put more investment on the back burner than before. And that's hurting the prospects of the companies being traded on exchanges around the world.
Exactly. It's been a bit of a very nasty day today across major markets and asset classes. But let's come back home to the German economy, where ThyssenKrupp, one of the old economy in the old industrial business in Germany, the supervisory body is asking the CEO, Kerkhoff, to step down. What's the problem with Kerkhoff this time around? What does the supervisory body want?
It seems that the patience of his employers has run out. That's the supervisory board representing the owners of ThyssenKrupp. And, you know, there's not all that much patience that was really had to be generated, because he's only been at the head of ThyssenKrupp since last July, so a bit more than a year. But he's not made a very impressive impression, and he wasn't the first choice in the first place. He wasn't the best candidate. He was the available candidate, one who knew ThyssenKrupp and one who could explain things to the staff. But he's been wavering. He's been wavering on strategy about selling the elevator unit, yes or no. I don't think the market still doesn't know today what direction that is going. Steel, first on its way out to merge with Tata Steel's Europe division, and then the EU forbidding it. Now suddenly it's a core business with acquisitions being made. It's just very difficult to explain, and it's cast the company on a downhill course on the stock market here. It's lost a lot of value, and Guido Kerkhoff is taking the plunge for that.
Yeah, perhaps age is catching up with a ThyssenKrupp there. But again, if you talk about the old economy, that was where ThyssenKrupp belonged. TeamViewer is in the new economy, which is around the world. Technology is king these days. So this company is joining your stock market today after the biggest IPO in Europe this year. How is this stock faring today with the downside that we've seen across the counters around the globe?
Well, the IPO of TeamViewer went over as a bombastic event here at the market. I'll get to that in a second. The share is going the general direction of all shares. It's actually plunging by about 3.4, 3.5% in comparison to the IPO price that was just set yesterday at 26 euros 25. Now it's trading at about 25 euros. And the investors here, I don't think it's due to the general geopolitical worries around the market and recession worries. No, that IPO price was perhaps a tad too ambitious. The company is successful, no doubt, but it's only recently start writing black figures, that is not being in the red. But it's growing tremendously. There's a lot of promise there. And whomever I've talked to, they've been very enthusiastic about a company like this joining the stock market coming out of Germany and finding international investors. The financial investor now selling all those shares that were brought to the market here is Permira, a British unit. And it's the third largest software maker in Germany, it says, growing tremendously. And one of the figures that's available is that this may mean something. It's provided software for example, computers communicating over long distances online to more than half the companies on the Forbes 500 list.
Quite bombastic, as you said there, for this tech company. Thank you, Ulrich Batz. Thank you so much. See you again tomorrow here on the show at 1:30 local time. GWTV, business correspondent for Channels Television, my colleague from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. I've got colleagues all over the world, so if you're watching the show, I keep getting them across to you. Let's cross to Julian Olayinka, my colleague from our studios in London, talking about the parliamentarians back now at Westminster Abbey after the Supreme Court ruled that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister's suspension of the Parliament was unlawful for 5 weeks. That's the story the parliamentarians are meeting. What are they talking about? And how's the market street taking this Wednesday? Juliana, you're back in business with me. Hope you had some time for lunch.
No time for lunch, Bosun.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, let's get after this business. Then you go get some lunch downstairs, I know. So, what are they talking about in Parliament in the UK right now? Any idea how the sitting is going so far? Let's start from there, shall we?
It's been interesting, Bosun. Very theatrical, I must say. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, flew back from New York at the UN General Assembly gathering at about 10:30 a.m. this morning. We've seen him pictured going into Downing Street, and he's really flown back into absolute chaos. You know, we thought it was worse before the prorogation of Parliament. It's got even worse. Now, he's due to speak at about 4:30 p.m. Typically on a Wednesday, we've got PMQs, which hasn't happened today. What we have seen, though, is a showdown between opposition MPs and the Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox. Now, Geoffrey Cox was the legal man who told Boris Johnson and the government that it was indeed lawful to prorogue Parliament. So, of course, you can imagine there's been slinging back and forth. I'm sure you'll be seeing that throughout today, some of his comments, which have been rather shocking, actually. He did say that Parliament at the moment is completely dead and should be thrown over, meaning that there should be a general election, an election that many believe won't take place until opposition MPs are sure that the UK will not leave without a deal on the 31st of October. Of course, there's been reactions throughout Parliament and throughout Britain. Tony Blair's been commenting, saying that he believes all of this Brexit fiasco has brought up a rift again between Ireland and the United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty hectic day, although it's probably going to get even more hectic once Boris Johnson speaks at 4:30.
Oh, that's good. I'm okay. You need to get that lunch very quickly and get to watch the Prime Minister. I'm sure he's going to be returning fire for fire, as it were. But quickly, let's squeeze in a bit from the market. Why is Banco Santander booking $1.65 billion in payment in goodwill ascribing to his subsidiary in the UK?
This is quite an interesting story. So Banco Santander is a Spanish bank, and its subsidiary is Santander, a popular bank in the UK. It's actually the 5th largest bank here. And they said that they're taking this money, withdrawing this money out of this subsidiary purely because they're not really happy with the regulatory framework here in Britain. They feel as if that money could be put to good use somewhere else. And they've also cited to investors today that the Banking Reform Act of 2013, this Reform Act was put in place just after the financial crisis, doesn't do them any good. Basically, what it means is that every bank in the UK has to set aside its retail business profits from every other profit margin it receives. And this means there's a $4 billion worth of assets that Santander in the UK have, and Banco Santander feel that that money could be used elsewhere. So it's very interesting. They say it's not going to affect the profits for Santander in the UK, but as soon as they announced that they were doing this, their shares at intraday are down 1%.
What are they? You got about 2.5 hours window, Juliana, to get lunch, get ready, rest a little bit, and let's catch up with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's address to the Parliament later today, early evening. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow morning, back on Business Morning, 10 o'clock Nigerian time. Thank you so much, Juliana and the rest of the team from London. Let's check in with the folks who are already in bed, if they've not had dinner or yet already. That's the folks in Asia. The markets looked terribly red today. Look at the numbers. The Chinese mainland stocks dipped to about 2,955.43. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng fell 1.27%, and the Japanese big 225 index closed 0.36% lower. In South Korea, the Kospi was down 1.3%. 2%, and Australia's ESX 200 also ended trading day 0.5% in negative territory. Singapore was down almost 1%. So it's early morning hours on the West Coast. That's talking about the United States, where the stocks index futures were lower Wednesday morning. Dow futures indicated a negative open of more than 27 points. Futures on the S&P and the Nasdaq were both marginally lower. As we look at these numbers, even the Nasdaq is now much broader, 1.46%. That's getting a lot more deeper than when we took those data about 12 o'clock Nigerian time. Nasdaq is down now 1.46%. S&P 500, 0.84%. A negative open looking much likely more likely on the U.S. market. So let's talk about some of the stories making the headlines here in Nigeria, with our delegation of policymakers making swift moves for a possible resolution to the P&ID legal battle in the UK. That's set for tomorrow. The delegation, led by the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has been meeting with investors, financial institutions and energy firms in London ahead of Thursday hearing that will see a British court rule on the government's efforts to fight the P&ID $9.6 billion arbitration claim. This is what the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, told our correspondent yesterday, who's part of the delegation ahead of tomorrow's hearing.
A British judge said in August that he would grant a firm called Process and Industrial Developments Limited, P&ID, the right to attempt to seize some $9 billion in assets from the Nigerian government over an aborted gas project. The company was awarded $6.6 billion in the arbitration decision over the failed 2010 project to build a gas processing plant in the southern Nigerian city of Calabar with interest. The sum now tops $9 billion, and that's 20% of Nigeria's foreign reserves.
What is probably more worrisome to us is the gargantuan scale of this award, because it's about 1/5 of our entire foreign reserve, and it's going to affect our ability to secure the country, our ability to provide the education, our ability to provide the healthcare system. And this is why we are not taking this matter lightly. We are pursuing every legal means to ensure that it's reversed.
Nigerian officials have vowed not to surrender any assets. Mr. Mohammed says the contract relating to a gas processing plant in southern Nigeria that never reached completion was marred with fraud.